Hi, my name is Nadia Thompson, and this will be my final project presentation for the class of CRJS333. So the crime that I was generated was sexual-related crimes. Basically, this covers a broad category of specific acts against adults, children, males, and females. Within this, rape or sexual battery is legally defined as a crime of a person having sexual relations with another person under the following circumstances: against a person's consent, while the person is unconscious, while the person is under the influence of alcohol or drugs, if the person is feeble-minded or insane, if the person is a child who is under the age of consent as fixed by the statute. So the North Carolina statute code of this offense is Article 7B, Statute 142720. They define a sexual-related crime as any sexual act that is against the will of the other person, with a person who is mentally incapacitated, with a person who has a mental disability, with a person who is physically helpless, and or touching against a person's will. The state that I was generated was the state of Montana. Montana's statute code of this offense is Statute 455501. They define sex-related crime as a sex act that shows an expression of lack of consent through words or conduct, meaning there is no consent or that consent has been withdrawn, and this involves whether the victim is incapable of consent because of being mentally disordered or incapacitated, physically helpless, overcome by deception, coercion, or surprise, or is less than 16 years old. So the punishment of the crime in each of these states, in North Carolina with sexual-related crimes, the punishment and length of sentence is based on their prior criminal history. The penalty for this crime ranges from 144 months to life without parole. And following the termination of active punishment, the person shall be enrolled in satellite-based monitoring for life. This basically would be put on a sex offenders list. In Montana with sexual-related crimes, the highest punishment is life imprisonment for any sexual crime. If the crime was sexual intercourse without consent, then they can also be imprisoned for a term of not more than 20 years and may be fined not more than $50,000, except as provided otherwise. If the crime involves the victim being less than 16 years old and the offender is 4 or more years older than the victim, or if the offender inflicts bodily injury on anyone in the course of committing sexual intercourse without consent, then they can also be imprisoned for a term of not less than 4 years or more than 100 years and may be fined not more than $50,000 except as provided otherwise. So a case that I found within my state of within the state of Montana that dealt with sex-related crimes was the state of Montana versus Twardowski. So the girl that was involved in this crime was named Unanimous. So if I ever just say the girl that was the victim that was involved in the crime, this girl lived with her mother in a house that was owned by her grandparents. Alan Peter Twardowski was basically a provider for drugs for her mother. Her mother was a drug addict, and he just kind of lived within the house with them as well. And in June of 2016, the girl began a relationship with a 40-year-old rancher and family friend named Cody Hill. At the time of this relationship, she was 13 years old, and they took part in sexual relations. And with Twardowski in July of 2016, Twardowski, who provided drugs to her mother and was considered a family friend, decided to give the girl driving lessons and ended up sexually assaulting her in his car on the side of a road during these driving lessons. So as this went on, she decided not to tell her mother. And eventually, when her mother and grandmother were having an argument about Twardowski being in the house way too much and being too close to the family, she ended up telling both her mother and her grandmother about the sexual assault of Twardowski, but never mentioned the assault from Hill. So on March 24th, 2017, the state charged Twardowski with 1 count of sexual assault, 3 counts of sexual intercourse without consent, and 1 count of sexual abuse of children, which at the time were all felonies. So basically, she went under counseling, and also she had to do a forensic exam. During both of these, she again never mentioned anything about her relationship with Cody Hill. And later on, an anonymous tip was given to the local authorities about Hill and her relationship. And he was at the time serving time in jail because of a DUI. And while he was serving this time, the girl ended up calling Hill while he was incarcerated, and the phone call was recorded, and they spoke about their relationship. So because of this, on March 5th, 2018, Hill was charged in district court with 4 counts of sexual intercourse without consent, one count of attempted sexual intercourse without consent, and one count of sexual abuse of children, and these were all felonies as well. During Twardowski's trial, basically there were a ton of witnesses, including the girl herself, her mother, her grandmother, I believe a few of her cousins, and the person that was doing her counseling and the person that also did her forensic exams. So during this, during the outside the presence of the jury, the counsel for Twardowski repeatedly requested permission to question witnesses about Hill, basically trying to say that their situations were similar. And this request for permission to pose questions about Hill was denied by the district court mid-trial. So Twardowski's trial went on and he was sentenced. Unfortunately, I could not find how long he was sentenced for. So with the overall findings, looking at the overall facts about sexual-related crimes within North Carolina and Montana, I personally believe that Montana provides a better definition and punishment for sexual-related crimes. The definition for both states were quite similar, but the definition for Montana seems a little more detailed than the North Carolina one. And with the punishment for these crimes, I believe the Montana is more detailed and allows for a more righteous punishment, as the North Carolina punishment looks at past history, while Montana does not. Past history, I believe, should not have anything to do with the present crime, especially when it comes to sex-related crimes, because rape or sexual assault is wrong in any form, and the man or woman offender that commits this crime needs to do their time in jail. These were the references that I used, and thank you very much.